Hey everybody, this is Lena, and you're watching Lena's Life, right? Wow, it's been a long time. I haven't been on for, I don't know, I guess since before all of the craziness started. I was, yeah, life has really changed a lot, hasn't it? In a short amount of time, too. I am kind of shocked, but not really, because in a way, I feel like Mark and I have been kind of seeing signs like this and things like this potentially possibly happening in our country. And, we're kind of um, taken as a lot of times as conspiracy theorists and stuff. And some of the things we say, people are like, oh my gosh, you guys are a little too extreme and stuff. And honestly, I was never like this before I met Mark. And he's just kind of been my teacher in that kind of thing because I didn't know anything. I remember growing up knowing about the end times and the mark of the beast and talking about that you couldn't buy or sell without a mark and you know um the end of the world and all this stuff. And I grew up kind of fearing the last days and the second coming and all that stuff. And I don't really believe in all that stuff anymore with regards to um the rapture and all the things that I was taught. Fundamental Christianity teaches you a lot about you know being ready, that the midnight hour when the rapture happens and all that stuff. I remember watching a movie. It was called A Thief in the Night, and being like freaked out as like a 6 or 7 year old watching it at church and seeing like scenes of like um, a little kid waking up in the morning and his parents were gone and they weren't in the house, and he was wondering if he got left behind, because the rapture came and happened. And it was always something that I I was very fearful of and concerned about because I didn't want to be, one of those that were left behind to be in the great tribulation. And there was all this talk about mid tribulation, pre tribulation. When was the rapture going to happen? When were things going to kind of like the S hit the fan and all that? And I remember growing up being told about Bible prophecy and the whole thing about Magog being Russia, and the scriptures in Ezekiel and Daniel talking about the abomination of desolation and um, what is it? The Battle of Armageddon, when the um, the Antichrist was going to make his presence known. There was going to be a one world religion, and all these things that I was taught. And I kind of put them to use now because some of the things that I was taught, although I don't believe in like fundamental Christianity anymore or anything like that, I do believe that there's an agenda and that there's a plan to try to control all of humanity. And this concept of a one world government and this whole, what's happened in the world is just, it really is um, quite alarming because in a matter of just like a couple of months, nations around the world have been able to clamp down and really use draconian measures to control their population. I mean, we were watching videos of like overlanders and van life people, that travel and they live out of their vehicles and stuff like that. Um, when things started going into that whole panic mode, nations clamp down, and there are some people um, to this day that are basically quarantined within the country, and they're under a lock in a gated area, so that the only time that they can go out is like maybe like once a week. I know in Argentina, they're not allowed to leave except for like going to the closest grocery store, which is like, super expensive, but it's the only thing that they can do. And masks are mandatory, and you can't really go out. So yeah, all of this stuff happened. I mean, the country of Hungary has basically taken their president is now basically their dictator, and he has all kinds of legislative powers that he didn't have before. And it's really disconcerting to see how the world has basically transformed itself. And the excuse has been because of this virus, right? This pandemic that's taken place, and the scare that people are under. I mean, I think the fear of it is even something that's palpably dangerous for people, because even though the symptoms, some people might not have the symptoms, it's that stress that people are under now, and this overriding sense of like isolation and worry and concern, and people losing their jobs, and life just not being the same anymore. And I don't think that life is ever going to be the same now that I don't believe that this is something manufactured or like drummed up and everything, just because it was like some kind of a thing that happened naturally and stuff. I really do believe that there's like a multi-pronged purpose for all of this taking place. And when the Twin Towers happened back in 2001, people were quick to just say, okay, country, do whatever you need to do to protect me, to make sure that I'm safe, to make sure that I'm protected and everything. So I willfully give up my rights. I willfully give up my freedoms. I willfully allow you to surveillance me and to monitor me. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the TSA sprang up, and it was like, my gosh, all of a sudden, here it is. It was like this big government entity that just came up out of nowhere. Within like 2 or 3 months, the nation had changed. Things were totally different. Going to the airport was now like a very different type of experience. Because like when I was growing up, I remember when I started working and stuff, and my first time traveling, and they flew us and stuff like that, you didn't have to worry about your ticket being even under your name. I mean, you could fly under someone else's name back then. And I remember back in the 80s, the movie Airplane 2, I guess it was I remember Airplane 2 because it was like a movie that I saw when I was at home as a teenager. And I remember that they would like kind of make fun of people going through security and stuff. And it was basically just, a metal detector. It wasn't this raise your hands. I mean, if you go to the airport, raise your hands, they blow air and they scan, and it's this massive like ordeal. You have to take your shoes off. You have to make sure that, all these, that you don't have things that you're not supposed to have, no liquids and no bottles and, all this stuff. And before, it was just prior to 9/11, it was not a big deal. Traveling was something that people just did. You know, you didn't worry about it. You didn't think about it. And now, here we are post 9/11, and it's been a different world. Something came out called the Patriot Act. I don't know if people have read the whole thing, but basically America gave up its freedoms. Basically, we are able to be detained without any kind of, reason, just because the government chooses to detain you. All of a sudden, there's this, facility out in Cuba, of all places, called Guantanamo Bay, that has never closed. I mean, it was set up to house the terrorists from Al Qaeda and all the stuff that was being, promoted as being something that we needed to be fearful of and worried about. And basically, it hasn't closed. It's still operational. There's really not much talk about terrorism anymore, is there? Now it's the unseen enemy, right? It's this virus that people are so concerned about, and rightfully so, because it, what it kind of reminds me of is when Emperor Constantine, back in the early, AD 325 AD, I think it was, he came up with this system of control that has worked really, really, really well for thousands of years now. And basically, it's the religious organizations, Christianity, Catholicism, the system of religion, because they realized that they didn't have to control people anymore through armies. Now you could put a big bad God as the one to fear. Now you didn't have to fear the sword or the spear. Now you had to fear the afterlife and burning and dying. The unseen God. Very similar to what's happening today. There's this unseen virus that people are fearful of, that governments are changing over and becoming more and more draconian and controlling and authoritarian. People want the economy to open back up. But the fear is that if you open up the economy, then the chances for the virus to spread are going to be pretty much self-evident by opening up the country again. And lo and behold, the only answer everyone to get vaccinated. Isn't that kind of ironic? Now, the fear isn't terrorism. The fear is a virus. And back in 1918, there was a pandemic back then. People did close their businesses and churches did close their doors. And they weren't crying about the fact that they were losing their rights. They knew that this was because they wanted this to be minimized so that it wouldn't affect a lot of people, so it wouldn't kill a lot of people. And basically, there weren't any authoritarian measures taken by governments. I mean, they did things for the good of the people, to protect the people. And then when passed through and had done its thing, they opened the countries back up again, and people just lived like normal, right? But the thing is now, this is being used in order to take away our freedoms, in order to take away our rights and our abilities to gather, our abilities to function, our abilities to live in our lives and things. And that's kind of like the double-pronged approach. You know, it's like, yeah, this is really causing a lot of problems for people physically. It is a legitimate disease. It is a legitimate virus. It is afflicting people, and it is a damaging thing. Some say that if it were to have happened in 1918, it would have been worse than that form of the flu. I don't like calling it the Spanish flu because I don't think the Spanish, should be given the blame for something that they didn't cause. I mean, this thing back in that day, it came out of Fort Riley, Kansas. So it came out of the United States, out of an army base of all places. And, and the Spaniards got blamed for it, I guess, or history blames the Spaniards for it, but they had nothing to do with it. So I don't really like calling it the Spanish flu, although that seems to be what people like, history calls it. But, the Spanish flu, right? The influenza went through and it affected so many people. And I think it was like over 500,000 people died in this country, killed millions around the world. But people didn't live with the fear of it coming back. And for some reason now, they're just instilling this fear that people should have of potential of COVID-19 coming back, right, in the fall. That this isn't going to be cured unless a vaccine is developed and created in order to counter it. And it's like, what in the world? Really? A vaccine is not really the answer to a healing or anything like that. It's actually a potential for more disastrous things to happen. I don't do flu vaccines. I don't do any kind of vaccine at all because I just fundamentally don't agree with the system of vaccination, and I mean, I know everybody has their own opinions on, that kind of thing, and to each their own. And, if you have no problems having, getting a flu shot every year and stuff to mitigate getting the flu and stuff every year, that's on you. That's fine, but I just don't agree with the whole concept of getting a bug in order to get rid of a bug. I mean, I don't know. So anyway, I just think that there's a lot more to this than people understand. There's so much to be concerned about these days. But in the same light, you can also say that society needs a wake-up call, need to be given a heads up, and to say, hey, this life that we've been leading for the last, 100 years, it's become so artificial, the way we communicate, the way we buy food, the way we live our lives, the way we function, the way we expect things to be done for us, and how we expect Google and Facebook to, you know, simplify our lives. And the truth is that it hasn't made life better. It's made it more complicated, and it's made it less organic, and it's given us less time to be able to interact with one another and to be able to be human and have a simple conversation. I'm sure that this time that many marriages are being repaired because they've been able to, the couple has been able to communicate and to connect with each other and to be in each other's face in a way that in the past, you know, when people are working their 9-to-5 job and their 40-hour work week, and, you know, the kids are at school and they come home and they do, they don't even eat together. They don't even chat or converse much. And they go from their room to their school and their school to their room. And, you know, it's really been quite remarkable because it's made people do things that they've kind of lost. You know, like humans have basically forgotten how to be human anymore. We've forgotten how to interact with the world around us. There's lots of people who are taking up gardening these days. And, you know, Mark and I, we did some research and found out that you could simply put like a stalk of celery, like the root of it, in, you know, like when you've eaten like the whole thing and there's just that little root piece, you could stick it in water and it'll start growing again. You just stick it in a little plastic container, and you could do the same with onions. You can do the same with lettuce, and it itself kind of multiplies itself, and it's amazing. It's amazing. We've been so dependent on the grocery store, and we're looking up different things with regards to like outside plants and the things that are around us locally, and we're discovering a lot of things, and maybe we'll talk about that in another show that we do, where we talk about, you know, what you can do to, you know, make your life easier by identifying the things that are around you, so that if and when the grocery stores were to shut down, that you wouldn't feel like you can't eat or something, you know, because how did they do it before? Did we have grocery stores in the 1800s? I mean, in the thousands of years that humanity's been alive, you know, there have been ways and means of getting food that didn't involve going to Kroger or to your local grocery store, to Walmart. Walmart wasn't even a thing, right? I remember Walmart, it was like, I think I went into my first Walmart when I was like 18 years old, I think. But prior to that, there was no Walmart. And I remember it was in Arkansas that my friend and I were going to overnight on our way to college. And we were going to meet up with my friend's relatives and stuff, the uncle and the aunt. And they said, just meet us over at the Walmart, the local Walmart. And I was like, yeah, but it'll be like 10 o'clock by the time we get there. And they were like, oh, it'll be open. And I was like, wow, stores open at 10 p.m. and there's people walking around. And so got there, and sure enough, there was lots of people at Walmart. It was so like not normal to be in a store at that time of night, because usually the latest they closed was like 9 o'clock or something in California where I grew up, and the grocery store maybe closed a little later, but just to go buy retail, the stores didn't stay open that late. But that's the thing, the world's become a different place. It's become so like dependent. People have become so dependent on the big mass manufacturers to bring everything to us. I mean, we have Amazon now, and it delivers things to our door. But the thing is, when all that goes away, what do we have? What is it that we'll have at the end? And that's going to be the organic, the things that we have that we have without having to go get something, from another person and stuff. Bartering, growing things, going inside oneself, meditating and contemplating the meaning of life. And these are the things that people are having time to do now. I mean, I wonder how many people are taking up yoga these days, how many people are looking at just sitting still and listening to their own heartbeat, just being quiet, going for a walk in the countryside, allow you to go walking, because some countries you can't even go outside. Beauty about Arizona, where we live here, is that we're able to enjoy the weather, which is really nice right now. And we have been going for long walks. We've been walking all over the place, and it's really nice, keeping our social distancing and all that. But we've been able to just enjoy outdoors and taking just a different look at our environment and where we live and the things that are around us. And it's kind of nice, it's kind of nice to be able to do that. I've always liked to walk. I used to be a runner. So I like that kind of that freedom that you have from being able to enjoy a good walk and stuff. And a walk is better than running because it doesn't mess your joints up as like, running can be so like taxing on the body. And as you get older, obviously, but it's just a good thing to be able to walk. So some of the things that have been taking place with how people have had to deal with things in life and the things that we've had to, make space for, some of them have been good, takeout and not being able to go into a dine-in restaurant. And I used to love going to buffets, but I mean, it's nice, the changes and stuff, and to be able to adapt and to know that as humans, that's what we do. We adapt to our surroundings. And as things change, as life does, present us with different challenges, the best thing we can do is to adapt, and to just go with the flow and allow things to take place, and to try to see what we can do to make ourselves, allow ourselves to grow and to be able to connect with the world around us. I mean, I know that we're social distancing and everything, but a lot of people have been connecting through Facebook and YouTube, and I guess Zoom's being used a lot. But at this time, it is a tough time because it's never been this way in this country or around the world. but we adapt because that's what we are. We're humans. We adapt to our surroundings. So anyway, I just wanted to share a few things, but thank you guys for listening, and hope you guys have a great rest of your evening and night or morning or whatever time it is in the world. And I'll see you guys on another Linus Life. All right. See you.